This is very strange. On the 27th of April in 2024, the people of Rigasa community in Kaduna State woke up to one of the most unusual burials in one of their local cemeteries. According to the story, a mysterious van carrying a total of 5 dead bodies showed up at Rigasa Cemetery, where 2 graves were dug to receive these remains. From a distance, it looked like a burial was taking place in the cemetery. However, the cemetery workers and passersby soon noticed something odd. The first thing that was off was the ambulance. It did not hold the name of the hospital. It did not even look like an ambulance. It looked like a van. The second thing that people noticed that was off with this burial was the fact that there were no well-wishers, no family members, no loved ones. It was just an ambulance with 5 dead bodies and 2 men. Where are the loved ones of these people being buried? Who are they? Didn't they have friends or families? Why is no one attending it? And the third thing that soon became obvious that something was off was the fact that only 2 graves were dug for these 5 dead bodies being buried. In fact, before things escalated to the point where it became violent, these 2 men who had drove this ambulance to this cemetery had already begun the burial process of these 5 deceased people. 2 men and 2 women, along with an infant child. And from the video circulating, it is believed that the 2 men were buried in one grave, while the 2 women, along with the infant, were buried in another. And this was completely odd and off to people watching. Even to the people working in the cemetery, it was unusual and they were confused. And instantly words began to spread, and the people in Rigasa community came to the cemetery to ask questions as to who and who were being buried in their cemetery, and why were 2 being stuffed in one grave. One of the major problems with the chaos that ensued was the fact that these people in Rigasa community were clamoring that whoever these people were deserved a proper burial. However, upon getting closer to the chaos, coming closer to see what was going on, they realized that this was much more than what they thought it was. Usually, a typical Muslim burial would have the deceased wrapped in white linen. However, there are processes to that point. The body had to be cleaned and prepared before they are wrapped. But when these people in the community came closer to observe these people being buried, they noticed some other things that were still strange about the deceased. They realized that the deceased were wrapped in this white lining, however, they were still in their clothes underneath it. They also observed that these bodies were already at an early stage of decomposition, and that they were not properly cared for from whatever mortuary they were being brought from, which made it all the more suspicious. And soon, words began to spread that some of the victims there were even decapitated, almost as though alluding to the possibility that these people had been killed and used for something and being brought there to bury the evidence. Soon afterwards, suspicion began to grow that maybe the 2 men who had brought these victims here would know something regarding their death. At this point, the suspicion only grew worse and chaos ensued. And according to sources, the 2 men who drove the said ambulance there fled for their lives and could not continue answering the questions, while their van or their bus was burnt to the ground. And soon afterwards, the police were involved. And it was then said, according to multiple sources, that the police had come to explain to some of the people there that these people being buried were not exactly murdered by anyone involved in the burial. There are claims, although not confirmed, that these were people whose body were found on the roadside or somewhere, as though that they had been killed by someone else, or they had been hit by a car, or they had had an accident and nobody had come to claim their bodies, or at the time that their bodies were found, it was already at the stage of decomposition, and by the time they took it to the morgue, the people at the morgue suggested that they were buried immediately. That these people who are being buried here may have been killed by someone else or something else, but there was no time for investigation. Rather, they were being requested to be buried instantly. And by rites or by Muslim tradition, when someone passes, burial is almost immediately. And I would understand that if these 5 victims had been killed by someone else or had been run over by a car, there wouldn't be enough time for the police to carry out autopsy or find out what killed them, given their state of decomposition, given how late they had been found, and also given the fact that these are Muslims. If it was maybe another tradition, they may have their bodies kept for investigation, observation, till whenever a culprit or whoever may have done this has been caught, or till whenever they're detected or find out what caused their death. But the people of Rigasa community were mostly, after the fact, requesting that whoever or whatever the circumstances was for these victims, they ought to be buried properly, which meant they had to be cared for, and whatever rites needed to be done should be done before they are wrapped and buried individually rather than putting two to one grave. At the same time, not many people know who these victims were. Not many people know what may have caused their death. Not their names or their pictures is circulating, and no one knows who these people were. And strangely, for the people of Rigasa community, they don't care. The only thing that they want is that whoever they were, they ought to be buried with dignity, regardless. So thank you guys for watching, but do share your thoughts. Do you think the community overreacted? Do you think the police were in the right to bury the people the way that they thought they should? Personally, I would understand that most times when a body is unclaimed or a body is found by the roadside, a lot of these authorities quickly rush to bury them somewhere and just keep them there till whenever somebody is looking for their loved ones. From what I've seen so far, pictures and videos of the deceased people are taken and kept for documentative purposes till whenever a loved one has come to report them missing. However, most people have criticized the police that they shouldn't have sent two random men with a van to come and just drop the bodies in the cemetery. The least they could have done was to escort them so that those two boys would not have faced the backlash that they did. They were almost beaten and lynched because many people suspected that they had a hand in the death of those people, whereas they had been given the go-ahead by the authorities with the burial, just without proper documentation or without proper information. And to me, it's a good thing that the people in the community spoke out and spoke up, although burning the van and going as far as trying to be violent may have been extreme. But I can understand that they were concerned as to who was being buried in their community. And maybe, hopefully, if anyone could recognize them, I guess now with this chaos, the police or the authorities will not be so eager to bury these people, so that at least if they have any loved ones or family members out there looking for them, they may now know where their loved one is or whatever happened to their loved one. But you guys let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And you can also turn on your notification button so whenever there is a new video, you'll be the first to get notified. Thank you for watching.